study, I believe, is 15 to 18,
18.
18 million. So that's been reduced, but the number that I showed you here is based on cash flow. So when the employee's going to retire, we're not funding, our goal isn't to fund 100% of $18 million and have that in a pot.
Pay as you go.
Right, pay as you go.
Thank you. This actually is a question for Mark. That 2.5% increase, is that what we're using in our budget?
At this point,
Operating fund options. At the bottom of the slide, you talked about if there was, to facilitate a change in that operating agreement requires unanimous approval of the board, your board.
And the 7 municipalities.
Does that mean that the 7 municipalities have to approve, or the 7 municipalities have to unanimously approve?
So the seven
of us have to unanimously approve.
No, it could be a majority vote
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Right.
But then your group, that's
Right.
okay. You talked a lot about, not a lot, you talked quite a bit about the replacement here. I know our facility here. I know that our police station, that was a very long process of looking a number of times at retrofitting that, adding to that. You were
part of that.
many of those. And here we are ready to move. What's the time? Not to hold you to anything, but what's your contemplated time? Is there a plan?
Bear in mind that long time frame with the police was fed by floods in 2010.
Understandably. My question is, what is you didn't address what is the plan and the kind of the big scale time?
Right, so we need to build and we've worked with Ellers on a financial model to look at the long-term debt on the facilities and how we could make it, I guess, the most sustainable for the municipalities.
And to tie it in with the...
And to tie it in as that debt expires. And I guess look at a way to try to keep the payment stable.
Right.
And also act as soon as we can on a couple of the buildings. So is there a way
Can
to
that work?
be creative? Maybe.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Can it work?
You get some of them.
We may not get it all done, but look at priorities and build up.
Lastly, I guess firstly, you guys do a great job from my perspective as a resident. The service level, the response level is excellent.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, as you have gone around to the other communities, what are their concerns?
I think very similar on the sustainability costs. So
When you say other communities, do you mean other fire departments?
No,
other than North Shore.
Other North Shore.
So we've only done, you're the second board that we've talked to or council. In general, my feedback that I get is the sustainability of that 2.5% increase as levy limits likely remain for a while, I would tend to believe. And how can that be managed? And
There's a structural problem.
right,
Yeah.
from a standpoint as the chief, if the citizens set what service level they want, I can say, hey, maybe you should think about this or think about that. My job is if you say, hey, we want 7 minutes and we want this to happen, I come back and say, this is what it's going to cost you, and then we have that discussion. Changing level of service for probably, any municipal service is tough because people get used to something.
Yeah.
And so how do you do it more efficient is generally a discussion and try to keep the same service out there. It's sort of the feel I get from all the municipalities. We really don't want to change. You see that with other garbage and street, snow plowing and streets and all that. You don't want to change, but how do you pay for it? And how can you creatively pay for it? Is there other revenue sources out there? I think the clear choice, or the clear feedback I've gotten so far is we want the service to stay the same, figure out how to do it for less money, which, we knew that. I guess working in this every day, I sort of knew this was the outcome of, you face it similarly in other municipal operations here. It's not rocket science that this scale up. But each department, whether it's police, fire, DPW, has different ways they can handle it. So keep the service the same, try to do it for a little less though.
Thank you.
First, I want to so commend you for the presentation. I mean, that is the most thorough financial presentation and analysis, and I'm very, very, very impressed.
Yes.
So thanks. You mentioned the 2%, I don't know, it was 2 point, the CPI plus 2,
Right.
sunset. What is in place now?
So now CPI was a half.
Half, and what's your recommendation? I mean, I want to, we're not preparing, I haven't had this discussion yet.
Right.
What would be your recommendation of moving forward?
So the committee came back, and this was probably one of the most sensitive discussions that this planning committee had. There is CPI plus 2 is what's in the report. It says consider changing it to that. As far as a cap, from my personal experience, I think there's pros and cons to a cap. Sometimes the cap is, it's a way to contain costs. I think that's a pro, and it's a way to plan. But also, some years, if you have some cost issue, some of the service improvement that all 7 municipalities still want to make, there is no provision to go beyond it. So,
Bank it.
what's it?
You can't bank it from 1 year to the next.
Right, you don't bank it. So, in the year that it was 0, the CPI was 0, and I think at that time, the board, if I remember correctly, there was a desire to try to keep the same level of service, but the self-imposed cap was a bigger challenge than potentially what the municipalities were able to pay that year based on levy limits and some other items. So the cap of CPI plus, whether it's a half or 2 or 10, sometimes doesn't align with some of the other outside factors, whether it's the economy, the levy limits. It doesn't always match up.
So would it be a range, like, would you say a 2% cap over a 10, over a period, so that sometimes when it's 0, it is banking basically?
You could, yeah. I mean, that would be a way to look at it.
Okay. And then my other question was we just finished our long-range planning discussion and adopted a long-range plan. I didn't see any costs in the next 10 years associated with any of these expenditures for facilities, capital expenditures. Do you foresee in the next 10 years coming to us and asking us for some capital funding?
So the funding that, and I don't know the plan exactly for Shorewood, but the debt service payment and capital payment the village currently makes to the fire department. If we can do it, I would leave it the same. So if the plan looked beyond 2022 or 2023, I would suggest if it doesn't, that likely that I think we can manage it with the same contribution you're making generally today. But it would extend 20 more years. And that's just sort of the average bond cycle for those things. So I guess I would have to leave it to Mark or the staff about where that fell in your plan.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it's not our improvement, so it's not in the plan. But where we anticipate that in our budgeting is in our overall North Shore Fire Department contributions, and as recently mentioned, we include those in our debt service fund, and should the member communities all approve facilities improvements, that would be built into debt service.
Aren't you planning to start studying that facility and options for it? Just given the amount of lead time it would take to have an idea of what to do. I mean, really, 2022 is not that far away.
Yeah, we've started, we've had some initial look at it, but that's definitely, needs to be done. And we've sort of, worked with the police, as Trustee Maher said, there is some previous study work on the facility that we've used, and we're working with the same architect firm that the village worked with, so there's a lot of history there. But we need to firm some of that up and look at that. And there's options for all facilities. It's a matter of, as I think any architect would tell us, we can pay to do whatever, what you want to do, they can build it. It's how much, what's the cost you're going to pay for it.
Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Any next question?
No, we got more.
Staying in
You can go.
Public Works?
Oh, we have before us transport station agreement with the Village of Whitefish Bay. This is an agreement that extends through to the end of 2025. It's been reviewed by staff, it's reviewed by legal. It's essentially with no substantive changes. The agreement that's been in place where we share operational costs with the Village of Whitefish Bay in exchange for their use of our facility. So I would I'm sorry. Somewhere where you're going. I would move to approve the agreement with the Village of Whitefish Bay for transfer station operation, ownership and maintenance agreement.
Discussion?
Committee recommended.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item, staying with you.
We have these next two are somewhat of a housekeeping item. I think in the past, in the not too distant past, we had a discussion regarding parks, and it was observed that our ordinances don't include, village ordinance does not include in the discussion of parks. It didn't name all of the parks. We were missing Humboldt Park, River Park, where Spectre Field is, and the nature trail. So what we have before us is a change to the ordinance regulating village parks to include River Park, Triangle Park, Nature Preserve, Humboldt Park, and any facilities there. So I would move approval of ordinance regulating, ordinance 2082, amending chapter 400 of the village code regulating village parks.
Discussion?
It's approved by, unanimously approved by the Public Works Committee for approval by the board.
Trustee Bachhorst?
Yes.
Trustee McKay?
Yes.
Trustee Maher?
Yes.
Trustee Rosen?
Yes.
Trustee Zolak?
Aye.
Trustee Ahmed?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Good job on mixing it up.
The second item regarding parks is a resolution to extend Hubbard Park to include the River Parkway, the lands that were acquired through the transfer and development of Harborside and the adjacent development. It is currently zoned. We did take care of the zoning change, but what we are doing here with this resolution is simply extending the boundary of Hubbard Park to Capitol Drive along the river edge. So with that, I move to adopt Resolution 2017-12, extending Hubbard Park northern boundary to East Capitol Drive.
Second. Discussion?
What's the current zone, P3?
Yes.
Other discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Walker?
Yes.
Trustee McKay?
Yes.
Trustee Rosa?
Yes.
Trustee Clement? Trustee Emmett?
Aye.
Trustee Zobit?
Aye.
And President Johnson?
Aye.
Aye.
We missed one.
Trustee, oh, yes, Trustee Bob. President Johnson. Clever.
Hey, got liver over there.
All right, the next item was a application for a special privilege permit for a parklet at Milwaukee Broad House 4022.